And now for our program. We are going to have, first of all, I wanted to say that we welcome Jeanne. She's going to help us learn how to take care of the fun, beautiful plants that do so well in Los Osos, the succulents. And she's going to also talk about watering, placement, pest control, and all different ways that we can be successful with succulents. And she is the owner of Cowcoat Succulents, and she conducts plant sales throughout the year. We grow slow, and when she's not caretaking plants, she is also a professional silk artist. So, did you have an open studio today?
I didn't.
Okay.
That was just a bridge too far, but
Yeah,
I've done it in the past. I may do it again in a year or so.
Great.
But
And and if we're lucky, we may be invited over to her place after she's done with her talk. And but before you leave, maybe you could help us clean up the place a little bit, and also don't forget to leave your name tags so that you'll have it next time. Okay, thank you.
yes. And like I just realized, I was like, I know. And I mentioned too, oh, Debbie Jo's left, but Biddle Ranch Winery has a beautiful LA of olive trees and the worst mess from fruit. And I know they would love it if somebody came and picked. I know that. Yeah, Biddle Ranch Winery on Biddle Ranch Road, first winery on Biddle Ranch off of Broad. Yeah. So, yeah, so as Wendy mentioned, I operate a small succulent business here in Los Osos. My husband has had a career in botany and horticulture, and so I've kind of been exposed to plants by default. But my first love has been art. I'm a painter. But about 5 years ago, I thought, I'm getting older, and I sit on my rear end in my studio alone day after day. That's not sustainable. It's just not healthy. So I thought, what kind of business can I start that's, gets me outdoors, gets me, around people. I was like, ooh, I have an art angel, a plant angel right here in my house who will help with the actual plant knowledge if I do the work and run it. So that's what I did. So I'm also in learning phase. Google Lens are my best friend. Always, when people ask me a question I can't answer, I'm very likely to say, I don't know, let's look it up. I don't want to tell somebody the wrong thing. But what I found is that I grew up on the East Coast and I love to hold a hose. I love to water. I can just water, and the plants don't appreciate that. So that's been the hardest thing for me, is just backing off on my love for watering plants. So that's been a big adjustment. What I've learned is that there are just a few things that succulents require. And one of them is the proper location. So siting. We think of succulents the way we think of cactus a lot of times, that, oh, they just want to be baking in the sun. And that's not true. Most succulents really appreciate, a few hours of sun, like morning sun is ideal, and then a little protection later in the day. And they will tell you if they're not happy. You will start to see either they'll blush really super red, which to some extent is great. That's what we call stress coloration. It can be caused from extra sun, it can be caused from cold, and it can be caused from low water being provided. To an extent, that's great and healthy and beautiful. There's a point though where we've gone too far. And usually that point is when they're really struggling, they're withering, they're losing a lot of leaves. And they're probably just telling you they just want a little more protection. I tend to grow most of my plants in small pots because I'm reselling them. But for my own home, I make arrangements of plants in pots because two things. One, I can put plants together that have similar water and soil and light preferences. And also, when they are not looking so great, they're easy to just take somewhere else, clean them up, put a new one in or whatever, and bring them back. So you only have to see what looks great. And I find that very forgiving way to garden. We just recently have moved into a house where we can have plants in the ground, and we've planted a little bit. You'll see if you come out today, we have a little area planted, but most of our plants are in pots where we can, you know, drag them around. And I also have, for better or worse, I have adjusted my thinking to realize that sometimes a plant is just not worth saving. Sometimes it's just too far gone, and you can just replace it with something that's going to do better. And part of that is you and how you are with maintenance. Are you somebody like me who wants to just drown everything with water, or are you the kind that just doesn't even remember you have a plant, and then you go, I waited too long. So just keep in mind your own tendencies as you begin to select succulents, because what I've learned is that there's some plants that I'm really drawn to. I cannot grow them. I just can't take care of them. And I don't know, you know, it could be my own habits of water and fertilizer and light. It could be that we just don't get enough sun here in Los Osos, or that, you know, they go dormant at the time of year that I still want to water them. You know, things like aeoniums. You may have remembered aeoniums are sort of a flattened rosette shape. They tend to go dormant in the summer during the long hot days of summer. Well, we call, you know, our version of the long hot days of summer. They go dormant. What they do is they close up. We see that and we go, oh, the poor thing is thirsty. And we water it. And that's the last thing it wants. It just wants to be left alone. So we can kill them with kindness, just as much as killing them with neglect, right? So, so location, planting them with similar water and light needs. And as far as fertilizer, I use a very, very diluted fertilizer through the growing season, which is like maybe March to September, October for most of the succulents I grow. And when I say a very light dilution, I use about 1/4 strength of a generalized sort of a just a balanced fertilizer. You know, all the numbers the same, you know, 6, 8, 7 or whatever. I use a 6-6-6 fertilizer. That's a balanced fertilizer, and I use that at 1/4 dilution with every watering. So very little. If you use a whole lot, what tends to happen is the plants will get too fat and big and fragile. You want, you know, you want them to stay compact and kind of hard. If they get too fleshy and elongated, then they're not going to do as well, and they'll be more vulnerable to pests. Speaking of pests, that whole watering thing, if you're a heavy waterer, sometimes that allows mealybugs to get established. Mealybugs, you're probably familiar with from all your other kinds of plants, but they are kind of a white, fuzzy substance. You'll see it usually under the leaves or between the leaves or in the dead leaves that form, you know, that drop off at the bottom. They will eventually disfigure and kill your plant. So what I do, I'm really a geek, you know, I walk around with my tweezers. These are my favorite tweezers. I always order extra pairs because I'm so afraid I'm going to lose them. But I have little pointy ones for getting into those little tiny places. And I have bigger ones and they have dull points so that I don't puncture leaves. But I like to clean all the dead leaves out from underneath. That gives fewer places for bugs to hide. And it's really gratifying. It's just really fun. If you see the white fuzzy stuff, there's mealybugs that can be on the leaves. There's also mealybugs, soil mealybugs that are down in the soil. If you buy a plant, it's a good idea to tap the plant out and look at that root ball. If you see white fuzzy stuff in the soil, just put it right back. You're not going to buy that plant today because you're going to have an issue with it, and it's going to possibly infect all your other plants. Now, if you have it, we all have it. I use a very diluted dish soap solution in a spray bottle. If it's on the leaves, I'll use that and just drench the plant in that. If I find it in the soil and if it's a bad infestation, I'm probably going to throw that plant away. But if it's just a few flecks of white, I will take that whole plant and the pot and the soil, and I will put it in a 5-gallon bucket of this solution of like 2 tablespoons of dish soap per gallon. And I will immerse the entire thing for about 8 hours, maybe even overnight. And then I take it out, and hopefully by then all the bad things are dead in there. But it's certainly a great start, you know. Rubbing alcohol in a spray bottle, also really great and very satisfying to just kill the little ones. But don't do that in the sunshine. Do that in the afternoon, or probably in the afternoon. Don't do it even in the morning, because you don't want the sun to burn the leaves as a result of rubbing alcohol. But let's see, what else do I need? Oh, soil. So most succulents appreciate very well draining soil. So what I do is, I'm not a big operation. I don't have my soil delivered. Like, I'd freak if there's a mountain of soil showed up in my driveway. But I buy a good quality cactus and succulent mix, and then I amend that 50% with more inorganic material like perlite or pumice or volcanic rock, whatever I'm planting, but I want the water to run through. And the way I like to water then is a really good thorough watering, but then no water until the soil is dry. So they want a really good watering and then to dry out. They don't appreciate a mister or a few drops. You know, they want to get a good watering and then dry out. Yes.
Are there any issues with watering from above or from below?
That's a great point. Yes. A lot of rosette shaped succulents don't appreciate water sitting in the little well of the plant. If you have a number of plants that's manageable, you can water just the soil, put the hose or the sprayer under the leaves and just water the soil. You can also place the whole pot like in a dishpan of water and let it wick up through the bottom of the plant. And that's ideal. I have too many. So it's like, you're on your own, guys. But what I do often is I'll go through then and like tip them for the little pile of water that has formed, so that it's not sitting in there. But yeah, that's a really, if you can do the underneath watering in a dishpan or something, that's ideal. Yeah. So we talked about mealybugs. Aphids are attracted to the sugar that the mealybugs produce. And so when you have a beautiful flower spike on your succulent, you'll notice maybe little black things appearing on it, and then ants running up and down it. And so what you're seeing is ant poop, and the ants are attracted to the mealybugs, the aphids on the plant. And what I do is, when I see a beautiful flower spike coming, I cut it off and I put it inside in a vase, and I enjoy it often for a month or more. That keeps me from having issues with my bugs. And it also allows the rosette to to be able to grow better than it would if it was putting all its energy into that flower spike. So I mean, I hate it, you know, but it's like, sorry, you guys, you're out of here. Snails and slugs. Well, what I do is I go out at night with my headlamp on and tweezers, and I'm just like Dr. Death. I'm just, you know, sorry guys, you're out of here. But you can also use Sluggo, I guess, I have dogs. They're not out there, but I still am jumpy about it. I don't want to hurt any animals except snails and slugs and mealybugs and aphids. So I use a manual approach, but you know, there's other stuff you can use. I've heard, you know, you can pour beer in a saucer, and I had a lot of drunk snails. I had them staggering away, but they didn't drown, so forget it. It's one thing I did want to talk about. I brought just a few plants today, and I'll pass them around. And I have them mostly in this one little tray. And the reason I did this is that because I sell plants, and so often I hear people saying, oh, I've got all these. Like, no, you don't have all these, you know, because there's so many new varieties being developed all the time. There's so much variation. So what I did, I have just a little tray. There's a little foam divider in it. And on one side of the divider are 4 different sedums. And on the other side of the divider are 4 different crasula. And the only reason I did this is just to show you within one genus how much variation there can be in leaf color, leaf form, hairiness, spiraling. It's just kind of cool to see that just in one quick look, and you can just pass it. And those are not precious. If the whole thing tips over, it's not the end of the world. And then I have also the same idea with some aloes. They're a little too big to pass around, but I'll just leave them here when we're finished, and you can take a look. But you know, 4 different plants in the same genus, but very different growth habit and coloration and all that stuff. Another thing that's useful, we talked a little bit about dormancy and how aeoniums go dormant in the summer, and then they're coming to life now. As the days get shorter and cooler, your aeoniums are going to go crazy. But learning succulent plant dormancy has been a game changer for me. I made some dormancy charts. You're welcome to them. And it is not a perfect science. Our climate here is so ideal that we can pretty much grow most things year round. We're not in Wisconsin trying to decide what's going to happen. But you will notice in terms of the growth habits of your plants that this will pretty much hold true, that right now, plants that are coming into their own that have been kind of sleeping over the summer are things like, you know, aeoniums, aloes, cotyledons, crasula, dudleas. You know, a lot of the plants that we are used to seeing in the summer when they're kind of closed up are going to go nuts now. So I'll pass these around. Anybody that wants them is perfectly fine. And then I'll also pass, this is just a little bit of an overview of what I just spoke about. It's just kind of a succulent care tips for the Central Coast. And you can take one of those. If I don't have enough, I will happily email them to you. And I do have a plant sale coming up next weekend at Cal Poly. So I work with 3 other growers, and we have been doing sales since the very beginning of COVID. And we invited Cal Poly twice, and they came, and then they invited us to go there. So we've done that now twice, and it's great fun. They always have a huge event, music, food, the ice cream truck. This sale is going to be a fundraiser for the Cal Poly Cat program. And so it's always a lot of fun. So that's coming up this Saturday and Sunday. And I'll pass these along.
That's at Cal Poly.
That's going to be at Cal Poly. And if you're coming to my house, I have more of these at the house. So if you aren't coming to the house, be sure to grab one. If you are, there's more at my house. Yeah. What kinds of questions do you have? I'm going to be available at my house. You know, how are we doing on time?
Oh, we're doing fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 3 o'clock.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Does anyone have questions that?
Your house from Barley.
It's about a mile. Yeah, it's right up LOVR, turn right on Willow, which is before South Bay. And then right on Napomo, and I have directions here. Yeah, I'll pass this around. This is just a quick cheat sheet directions to my house from here.
I've seen like some of these plant shows or whatever, people have grown some of these succulents that are just huge, and they've been growing them forever. They may be hundreds of dollars.
Yes.
You want to buy something.
Yes.
That's just a whole nother thing. I like the fact that you buy little affordable, you sell tiny little affordable things, but some of these things can really become almost like sculptures. Right?
Oh, they're crazy. The people that, you know, that show them in the open category, which is, you know, professionals and commercial growers. It is such a fun, well, you know, as y'all know, plants are fun. Plant people are fun. Plant events are fun, you know, and so they're super competitive, and they will, you know, they'll have something, you know, like they'll bring it in, you know, to the show, and like people, where did you find that? You know, oh, I'm not going to tell you, you know, but they'll, you know, have a special pot made for it. They'll stage it with beautiful rocks and, you know, special rocks on the top, and it's a whole thing. You're absolutely right. And some of these people have grown these plants from seed. So some of the plants they're showing are 30 and 40 years old. So it's if you have not been to our big cactus and succulent show in May, it's really worth it. As Debbie just said, it is like an art show, really. You know, it's amazing. Yeah.
And they also have all different levels of competition where
Yes.
you can enter your plant.
Yes.
And just recently, my grandkids entered their cactuses, and they
Yeah.
actually won a prize for their age level.
Right, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really fun. I go and volunteer at the show. I don't sell at the show, but I show. And so it's really fun to, you know, you walk around, you find your ribbons, you know, and yeah, it's really fun. So, and they're great. They'll happily coach you, you know, you come in and you're like, well, I have this plant and I love it, but I don't know what it is. And they'll say, okay, go talk to that guy over there. He'll put a name on it for you. So then you get a name on it, you know, and they're really friendly at the Central Coast Cactus and Succulent Society. And that's on that piece of paper that I'm sending around. But yeah, it is a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun. Yeah. Any other questions about succulents?
Yeah, that's next weekend.
Mhm.
Like hundreds of people, a few people. What should I expect?
Okay, so based on the last sale, so this is going to be Parents Weekend. So the event is in the greenhouses and outside the greenhouses, and there's also music at the Arboretum. Jill Knight and Bryn Albanese are both playing out there. So there's going to be a lot of people on campus. It's hard to say how many are going to come through. It is. It's yeah. Yeah, it would be really fun because there's, you know, they're going to have cats there for adoption. They'll have Cal Poly grows amazing houseplants, and they're priced at wholesale. So when we go to their sales, we buy like all their plants because we can't resist them. It's like we'll see some beautiful Monstera or something that we know is a $50 plant, and it'll be $20, you know. So but they have really great houseplants there. If you haven't been to their student grown plant sales, they're pretty amazing. So I'm gonna be going, Steve Super is gonna be going. He runs a wholesale nursery on 9th Street by La Casita. Nick Wilkinson, who runs Botanica Nova and also Grow Nursery in Cambria, is also going to be coming with us. And then the Cal Poly student grown houseplants. So it should be a lot of fun. Should be a really fun weekend.
Particular succulents that struggle with the fog or the wind, so I'm sort of up in that fog belt. Are there any that are more temperamental to that condition, or?
Yeah, so you are on salty fog, or is it?
Away from the salt.
Okay.
Except from off Baby Nice Drive.
Okay.
You do get a lot of moisture.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the thing to watch out for is like mildew, things like that. So you probably do better with plants that don't have closely stacked leaves, where there's a little more air movement between the stacks of leaves.
Okay.
They'll just get better circulation. Maybe planting a little more space between them, or adding some rock so that the rock becomes part of the landscape as much as the plants. That'll help them get a little more, they'll hold a little more heat from the sun we do get.
Yeah.
And that'll help keep them warmer. Yeah.
Aloes would do okay?
Yeah, most aloes would do okay. Yeah. Yeah. I burned a lot of aloes when I first started doing this. I thought of them like agaves. Even I know perfectly well they're not, but they kind of look like it. They want more protection. Yeah. Yeah. So, anything else? I hope you guys can come, or some of you will come to the house. You may have seen my little succulent trailer that I take to the plant sales. And the great thing about that is I only bring what is perfect. But then there's a lot of other stuff at home, and some of it is stuff that's not rooted yet, or it's just too weird. I'm not sure that it is marketable. Might be, it might be my mother plant, I call it, or stock plant that I use for propagation that isn't for sale, but it's still kind of fun to look at.
So if my succulents need repotting, is there a good time of year to do that, or should I wait until another time?
I like to do it at the very beginning of their growth cycle, which for most plants is going to be like, late spring, March or April. I start seeing stuff going crazy, and it's nice because it's traumatic, when you yank everything out. It's nice to do it when it's going to want to recover, like right now I'm taking a lot of cuttings of things that are winter growers, but like my Echeveria and stuff, they're not going to appreciate being beheaded right now. They're just not, they're just gonna die. So but the things that are going into their growth phase, Dudleyas, especially, this is when they want to be propagated, because they're gonna go crazy when we start getting hopefully winter rains.
Propagate them through cuttings?
Yeah. Now the thing with Dudleyas,
Or
no, usually
individual.
a rosette. Yeah. The thing with Dudleyas is that you may have seen Dudleyas, well, certainly in the wild, where you see all the dead leaves on the stem, right? And so when you show them, or when you grow them for showing or sale, I don't like to take those leaves off, because that shows the age and the it's very venerable to have a plant, like that shows the leaves, so if you behead it, you lose that. Now you might get some pups along that stem where you did behead it, but you might not. You might just lose it. And then you're starting out with a much more attractive, small, compact rosette, but there's no story behind it. Yeah. So yeah.
Do you ever let some of the different ones dry out that are very easy to grow? Say you're just breaking them.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you ever just let it dry for a bit before you put it in?
It kind of depends on two things. It depends on what plant it is and what time of year it is. You know, some plants like a cactus has so much liquid in it that if you were to cut it and just stick it in even dry soil, it's probably not going to make it. It's probably just going to rot. So with plants like that that are very wet, you want to put them aside, like in the shade, not in the soil, just in a flat or like something like this. Just put them in the shade for, you know, a week, 2 weeks, until you see a little callus. They call it callusing, when that raw edge begins to get a little dried out. At that point, you can put it in dry soil, and then you don't want to water it. This was also hard for me to learn. Until there are roots, there's no way for that plant to take in water. You're just rotting it. Yeah. So you want to plant it in soil. I use tags. You'll notice at the house, I have purple tags on things that are priced and for sale. I have red tags on things that are not for sale. I have blue tags on things that are not rooted, because I don't want to forget and water them. So on those flats of things that aren't rooted, I'll, you know, go in the greenhouse or the bench or whatever, and I'll water and I'll avoid those. And then every week or so, I'll kind of give them a little tug. And if I feel resistance, then I think, ooh, maybe they're starting to root, you know, and then I might tip one out and like, oh, yep, there's roots. Now we can water, because now they have a way to utilize that water. So yeah, they just, yeah, I mean, well, like I said, I'm learning just by the way we learn anything, by throwing a lot of stuff away.
Cactuses are those similar epiphyllum
Yeah,
that you want to definitely harden them off.
Yeah.
A little bit.
yeah. Those are great plants, and I find that fascinating, because I mean, cactus in general are so fascinating. The plants themselves are so inhospitable, you know, they're not off, sometimes they're not even pretty, but then they do these flowers that are just crazy. Orchids are a little bit like that too, right? Where the plant is kind of homely, but then the flowers are just crazy. So yeah, very interesting stuff. So, okay. Well, oh yeah.
So I keep reading that there are some succulents that you shouldn't water it all over the winter. In fact, you should take them in, hide them from the rain, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which ones are which?
You know, most of what we're going to grow, unless you're a collector, you have a greenhouse, most of what we're going to grow here needs a little bit of water through the winter. I have a couple of things that absolutely no water. Sometimes bulbs don't want anything during the winter. Some of the caudiciform plants, a caudex is a fleshy base on a plant that sometimes sometimes they're underground, but sometimes growers will stage the plant so that is above ground, because it's kind of cool to see that. It's kind of like a baobab tree. Have you ever seen pictures of a baobab tree? It's kind of like that. And they will rot if you water them at all. They, you know, and you want to give them a little bit, but the best way to handle that is to not give them water until you see a little tiny green sprout coming out. And then you can start watering them, because that's when they're starting to send out some new growth. Yeah.
I guess that's why you have to know their names, so you can.
Yeah, and that brings me to something you will notice when you come to. I just did a plant sale on Friday down in Arroyo Grande, and when I bring plants to a plant sale, I really try hard to have a name tag on every plant. And the reason I do that for several reasons. One is it helps me keep track of what I've got, and I also lets me then Google it if I don't know what it is. But that's how you can learn, is to, you know, just bought this plant. It's so cool. I have no idea how to take care of it. Look it up, find out what it wants, find out what its needs are. And then you will become a better plants person, you know, because then you'll be, you know, you'll also notice, you know, well, I do really well with aloes, but I can't seem to grow sedums. Well, that helps you then when you're buying plants. It's like, buy things you do well with, you know, get a few new things that are challenging, but we all have things that we do really well and things we don't do well, you know. So having those names lets you be a more informed plants person. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And if anybody wants to just look at these aloes, just because it's fun that there's so much variety, I'll just leave them here for a minute and while I'm gathering up.